So, I've tossed up the idea of telling Sea of Thieves stories for a little while now, and I think this is where my strength lies. I like to tell stories. I will present them in a very cheesy way, so hopefully you're into cheese, otherwise you've probably come to the wrong video and you're watching the wrong thing. Go find something else. Yeah, I'll be telling in a very cheesy way, and I'm positioning it as if all of us are characters in this world. So please sit back and relax. And let me tell you a tale. You decide if it's tall. The tale of Blue Crew and their first ever haul. The bard was plucking away at his guitar strings as he listened to the patrons of the Red Hound. They told stories of adventure and plunder, excitedly embellishing their exploits. The bard lived vicariously through tales of this sort, as he rarely found the opportunity to adventure himself anymore. One story in particular captured his attention, told by an older-looking man with a bald patch and a scraggly beard.
I halted an entire battle simply by firing off one round. Why, I hadn't even hit the correct target,
he proclaimed proudly.
I vowed then after to never touch a pistol again, as my pistol purse was too grand. Wink wonk!
The bard cheered at the joke. The bard found himself snickering, mostly because the old man seemed to carry a pistol strapped under his makeshift cloak, despite his claims.
Hey you, Smurfhead!
A bar hand called, grabbing the bard's attention. He was certain this was referring to him, as he had a purple-blue gradient to his hair, and it often led to jests of such a nature. The bard placed his instrument down gently and addressed the man. Yeah, that's me. How may I help you?
Do you know that bright-haired bird girl?
The bard raised his brow. The man was referring to his friend Bluebird, someone he occasionally had adventures with in the past. I do indeed. What about her?
Well, none of us have seen her in a while. We were wondering if you might know where she's... if she's...
Still alive? The barhand shook his head quickly.
No! I was going to say if she's okay, but yes, is she still alive?
Well, was last I checked, he said, thinking back to their last adventure. They'd gotten caught up with a trade caravan and camped outside a very strange town for a week. Both them and the rest of their companions had left that adventure very wealthy, but he'd not seen her since.
Well, the man continued, give her our regards when you see her next, will you?
The bard smiled. Of course. Perhaps I'll pay her a visit tomorrow. And indeed, the bard would. Bluebird had held herself in isolation for some time after her last adventure. People occasionally became tiring, and she needed space to think. But sometimes, that space led to too much thinking. It was for this reason she had turned her attention to planning her next adventure. In her formative years, she had joined a young crew of pirates who had taken her to a mystical place full of treasure and secrets, a place where death was only temporary. The Sea of Thieves, she whispered to herself. In the company of her 3 companion cats, she began mapping out her voyage using a large spreadsheet. Her abilities to organize things in such a format were exceptional, but she hadn't really been paying attention during the first trip, and so there were a lot of gaps to fill. It was as she was figuring out the final details that she realized she was going to need a crew, or at least a companion. A trip like this was dangerous to take alone. She sighed with deep introversion. With unbelievable timing, she heard a knock at her door. This startled her. Very few people knew where her lair was located, and even fewer dared to visit. She looked around for a weapon and ended up grabbing for an old wooden bow staff that was leaned against the wall. Another knock, followed by a familiar voice.
Blue, are you home?
The tension in her shoulders eased a little as she drew the door open.
Bard, what are you doing here?
The bard glanced up and down at his friend, as he saw her disheveled and frustrated face. "I'm terribly sorry to be bothering you, but you see, people were asking me if you still lived, and I found myself feeling the urge to find out. May I come in?" Blue smiled awkwardly through the frustration. "I suppose. Sure. Yeah, come in," she said as she stepped aside. It didn't take long for the frustration of having her privacy invaded to fade as the two friends conversed. They reveled in their shared memories as the bard made them both coffee. Eventually, Blue told him of her adventures in the Sea of Thieves and her plans to return. The bard had heard of this place long ago and had always dreamed of visiting, and thus Bluebird had found herself a companion. After a few weeks of preparation and the purchasing of a custom-made sloop, the bird and the bard had begun their maiden voyage to the Sea of Thieves. They sailed from their home in Australia all the way to South America, and then to a speck of sea off the coast of Puerto Rico. It was here that they found the shroud. Blue had carefully charted their course, and though the ship seemed to be thrashed and pulled and bounced about by invisible forces, eventually they saw themselves to clear skies. They had made it. The air was warm and had a sweet saltiness to it. In the distance were isles aplenty, all green and gleaming with golden sandy shores. "Golden sands," Bluebird explained, as the bard was admiring the views. "What?" "We're going to stop at a place called Golden Sands," she explained. "Oh, what's that?" "Well, it's an outpost, so you'll be able to meet some of the representatives of the different companies there. One of them can give us a quest, and we should be able to get paid if we complete it." The bard, admiring the horizon, smiled. "We're about to become pirates, Blue. Every young person's dream." Golden Sands Outpost was beautiful. A collection of quays lashed together by rickety bridges, with all of its structures cobbled out of scavenged ship parts, raggedy rope, and a lot of hope. There weren't many people who called this island home, though those who did had immense character. The bird and the bard visited the captain's head tavern, where they had a drink. The owner, Tina, welcomed them to the sea, and then pointed them towards the gold hoarder named Hugh. If they were looking for a quest, he was the man to talk to. The hoarder had a dirty black mustache and short greasy hair, though those details were hardly notable compared to the scaly plates of gold that seemed to have formed over and under the man's skin. This curse had covered half his face. He rudely introduced himself to them, asked them what they wanted. He seemed willing to give them a quest, but utterly disdainful of their presence outside his ramshackle tent, which could hardly contain his amass of coins. The quest came in the form of a treasure map with a water-stained key symbol marked on the back. The parchment was old and worn, and there was a single red X marked on a small island. Bluebird had explained that practically all the islands here were small, except one, a place hidden in the north, beyond what she called the Red Sea. If someone tried to leave the Sea of Thieves without proper knowledge of how, their ship would be torn apart. As this was the first the bard was hearing of it, he was understandably a little bit miffed. "How are we supposed to get home then?" he asked. Bluebird remained silent and grinned. "No, seriously, how do we get home?" "So," she said, as she placed the map down on the table and jabbed a knife next to it, "I need you to stab this table." "What? Why?" the bard asked, not forgetting that Blue was ignoring his question. "That's how this works. You stab the table, and the voyage can begin." The bard pulled out his dagger, and he did as he was told. He'd learned arguing with Blue was generally quite pointless. He stabbed the table, and a strange music played in both of their ears. It flooded across the waves like a choir, warming up for a show. "What the hell was that?" "Our voyage is beginning," she said with a smile. The bard spent his time in the crow's nest, while Bluebird manned the helm and managed the sails. She knew what she was doing, and he didn't want to get in the way. He noted, as he looked out on the horizon, a strange cloud formation not far away. It was shaped like a skull, and the eye sockets seemed to flash with life. "Bluebird?" the bard questioned. "Yeah?" "There appears to be an angry dead person in the sky." "Oh yes," she chirped. "That's normal, just ignore that." That doesn't seem normal to me." "Oh yes, there's gonna be a lot of that. You'll get used to it." The bard wasn't certain he would, though he had experienced magic before, and Bluebird had warned him this place was magical. He had a particular discomfort regarding mystical matters orientating around the ocean. Despite this phobia, he was still just mad enough to accompany Blue here regardless. She was worse, because she hated sand. Literally everything about this adventure was soaked in sand. Even her favorite book series was named after a desert. "Land ho!" Bluebird called. Generally, that was supposed to be the job of the person in the crow's nest, but as the bard had been distracted by his musings and the floating skull-shaped clouds, he wasn't mad. The ship glided in gently and then viciously crashed as it contacted the beach. Bluebird hit the anchor, which seemed to draw their movement to a halt, and rushed below deck to patch the holes. The bard bilged what water had soggied the floor, and then together they stepped upon the shore. "Another happy landing," the bard giggled. "Indeed," Bluebird agreed. The pair carefully followed the map around the coast of this little island for a while, matching landmarks to their positioning, when suddenly the bard noticed a chilling and creepy sound chime through the water. A low-toned hum which emanated from a thin stone statue. A statue which held the features of a human, but combined with a fish. That is, very, very creepy. "Ooh," Bluebird exclaimed excitedly. "If we destroy it, there should be a gem inside." The bard carefully drew his sword and stepped a little closer. "And they're valuable?" "Very," she confirmed. The bard sighed. "Okay then, we'll destroy the creepy cursed statue." He stepped forward to swing his sword, but as he did, he noticed a stinging, aching pain start to cover his body. He swung, and the statue groaned. The pain grew more intense. "Blue, I think the statue is hurting me." "It is," she assured him. "Keep swinging." She was at his side now, hacking away like a madwoman. Each strike made the statue crack and groan as if it were a living thing. The pain had become so intense that he was certain he would fall unconscious, but he pushed through. One final strike from the bird, hard, the statue shattered, and a ruby gemstone appeared in the water. Bluebird grabbed a banana and shoved it down her throat hole. The bard drew back in disgust. "Oh my gods, what are you doing?" With a mouthful of fruit, she mumbled, "Food makes you feel better. Here." She pulled out a coconut and shoved it in the bard's face. "Eat," she said, as she finished her mouthful. He wasn't fully happy with the idea of consuming a full coconut, shell and all, but he was too weak to fight her, and so down the gullet the coconut went. No time for chewing. Moments later, he noticed he was feeling better. "Whoa, strange," the bard proclaimed. "I told you, there's going to be a lot of abnormal, normal things." She wiped a bit of banana peel off her chin. "Now, I think the treasure is buried somewhere over here." She pulled out her compass and stepped a few feet to the left. "Dig right about here," she said. And the bard complied. He felt his shovel thud against something solid almost immediately. "A seafarer's chest," she said excitedly. "We'll be rich in no time." The bard smiled at this joyfully as they pulled the old chest out of the sand. It was barnacle encrusted, old, iron banded, and just a little bit rotten. He could almost taste the riches this chest was going to bring them when they returned it to the sour old gold hoarder. The chest had sold for a measly 200 coins. I'm really sorry, Bard. I had a feeling it wasn't going to be worth much. It's fine. I still had fun. The two were sat in the tavern and spent their coins in less than 10 minutes on grog. I think we're going to need to find some better voyages, the Bard said. We need to become pirate legends, Bluebird mumbled. Oh, what's that? Well, when we've worked for the companies enough, we'll be well known and attract the attention of the pirate lord. And then he'll let us into his hideout and we'll be able to access better voyages there. The friends I used to sail with, they showed me once. That sounds utterly remarkable, said the Bard. Where do we start? At that very moment, a barefooted man with a stern look on his face trumped in and glanced over at the table where the Bird and the Bard were sitting. He ordered a drink from Tina in a thick accent that hinted he was from the north of UK, and then stepped over to the pair's table. Sorry to interrupt, but did I hear you say you were going to be doing some voyages and become pirate legends? The Bird and the Bard looked at each other and then back at the man. He seemed nicer than he looked, but the Bard was careful to trust. What's your name? Bluebird asked cautiously. Name's Dan, but my friends call me Calamitiii, spelt with 3 I's. So like Calamii? The man grinned and responded. No, you twat. It's spelt Calamitiii. Well, Calamity Dan, how can we help you? The Bard asked. I've just arrived here, and I'm looking for a crew. Most of the other folk I've met around these parts don't seem too friendly like. And this is the part where the real Calamity Dan TDM's Cog and spawn camps him for getting his accent wrong. Before the Bard could respond, Bluebird smiled. Looking for a crew, eh? I think you found one. The Bard slumped in introversion and then mumbled, we're gonna need a bigger boat. And so the Blue Crew was formed, and a goal was set. Together these three would make the journey to become pirate legends.